Is that a bear?
Look, look, look. Woo!
I've got to go around and update all of the posted signs that surround my property. My farm's about 160 acres, give or take. And Vermont law requires that if you want your property not to be hunted, you have to go around and update each sign once a year. And you have to have signs at the corners of your property as well as no more than 400 feet apart. That basically means that once a year I have to go through and check to make sure all my signs are up and that nobody stole them. And I have to make sure I put like an updated sticker that has the new date on it so that I'm covered for the next year. And I will admit, it always kind of annoys me when I have to do this because it's kind of a pain in the neck where I have to take a significant chunk of a day and walk the perimeter and measure out each point where I need to have a sign and stick updated dates on those signs. But if I don't want to have to deal with trespassers and lunatics with roving packs of hounds, kind of what I have to do. So right here is the far southeast corner of my property. This whole stretch that I've just been covering, it's actually the easiest part to mark and manage the signs. The rest of it requires me going deep into the woods, which is where I'm taking you guys today. Oof. This is some heck of a scrub I got going here, huh? Yeah. It's super swampy in this part. Here's my next sign. For folks who are actually new to my YouTube channel, I've actually dealt with a number of issues over the years related to conflicts with folks trying to hunt my land.
Okay, baby. Tries to put himself across as a Vermont farmer, even though he has a guard dog that is actually a trained killer.
And that conversation has still not happened.
Mr. Gold, you and I are considered enemies.
You should 100% call the authorities. Like, call the police.
There are legal ways of taking care of things, and that is in the process.
I want to talk about...
I'm not talking about a thing.
Are you a native Vermonter? Where'd you come from? What the hell don't you get back? Mind your own business.
You know something? When a bear comes and visits you, you're gonna really think it sucks.
Go back to Hatford, where you belong.
I'll try to get in through here before I soak my shoes. I got a long ways to go and I don't want to walk in wet feet. Oof. This sign has seen better days. I'm just gonna replace it. So yeah, so now I just see as an annual rite of passage for the end of summer where I take a day off from doing useful farm work and instead I have to waste my time putting up these stupid signs. And it all kind of annoys me because it's completely unnecessary in this day and age. It's unnecessary that I need to do this every single year. It's unnecessary that I even need to do it in general because given the state of GPS technology that even Vermont's Fish and Wildlife Organization is willing to recognize as a tool for guiding hunting rules and regulations, I still have to come out here and do this. And I find it so annoying. And I know probably for the folks who saw my video last year that I made on this very same topic, this might seem a little bit redundant, but I like to take this moment as an opportunity to go on a nature walk with you guys and show you the glory of our forests, as well as use it as a chance to hop on my soapbox and complain for a few hours while I do the work. Oh wow, looks like this fir tree just went tumbling not too long ago. Ah, got a spider on my face. Ugh. This is actually the edge of the cedar swamp where my land borders my neighbor's land. We're both trying to just let it kind of rewild, become good wildlife habitat. If I can find my next sign, I think it's actually still over here. You know, and just one thing to make very clear, I'm actually not opposed to hunting. I'm actually a hunter myself. I mostly hunt deer and turkey on my farm. I don't really go to other places to hunt. And so every fall I'll go out there hoping to score some wildlife. And that's because I really do believe that because most of the major predators that would typically prey on deer and turkey have been eliminated, you really do need to have people managing the populations of those animals in our climate, or else your wildlife can grow out of control. So I do feel like in some forms hunting is exceptionally necessary. But I also strongly believe that some forms of hunting are completely unnecessary and you actually don't want to do. So for example, hunting bear or bobcat or coyotes I actually think is detrimental to the ecosystem here, which if I'm going to be talking about my priorities, managing the ecosystem the right way is something that I feel like is really important. Based on my notes, I think there's supposed to be a sign somewhere around here, so I'm just going to drop another fresh sign right here. This year I actually printed off a bunch of weatherproof labels that have my name and address and the date on it, so it's really easy to post up now. Shouldn't say easy, it's easier. You know, there's some states like Maine and Pennsylvania where they have what's known as a purple paint law. And all you have to do is like go out there and spray paint some purple on the corners of your property, and that marks it as, you know, off limits for hunting. And that seems like a very reasonable compromise for both allowing people to hunt land that's being unused, but then also making it relatively accessible for the landowner to mark their property and not an extreme burden.
And this is where our path starts to get a little bit more treacherous. I'm actually doing this a little later than usual this year because I waited. We've had such a wet summer that just even about a week ago, this entire area was completely rushing through and I wouldn't have been able to walk across like I am today.
Which again speaks to the weird burden that this is for Vermont landowners. And as a guy in my mid-40s who's pretty active, you know, it's not exactly difficult to do this walk, but I couldn't imagine being a guy in my 80s and having to do this walk 40 years from now, let alone being a landowner with a disability of some sort. I'm actually still surprised that nobody's actually challenged the hunting laws as discriminatory just because of that fact. I mean, they really do place the burden and work on the landowner.
Oh shoot, forgot my stapler back there.
I hate this. There it is. Yay. I forget what I was saying. I don't know. I was probably just ranting about being mad at the hunting laws here in Vermont. The reality is, Vermont's Fish and Wildlife Department doesn't really work so much for the people of Vermont or the wildlife of Vermont as it does look out for the special interest hunting groups here in the state of Vermont. I mean, like, heck, even if you look at the board of directors for Vermont's Fish and Wildlife, I've actually shown up at a few of their meetings, and based on the meetings that I've watched, whether they be in person or in Zoom, or looked at the meeting minutes, it seems like they're not so much focused on the wildlife as they are about protecting the rights of hunters.
I might suggest that we revise the wording to remove the word humane. The definition of that word involves compassion and could be misleading.
Yes, that was Vermont Fish and Wildlife board member Allison Frazier asking that the word humane be stricken from some new trapping rules because I guess it involves compassion.
So yes, when I see behavior like that by people who are supposed to serve the people of Vermont as well as the wildlife of Vermont, I guess you can kind of see why I get so testy.
And while we're griping about Vermont Fish and Wildlife, another problem that I have is even if you go to their website to look for information on how to post your property properly, they don't even give an example that's accurate. Because look at this sign. Notice that it lacks any sort of request for a date. Nowhere on the website does it give you examples of what the date should actually look like, or even what the accurate or correct date format is, or even any of the rules related to when you can date your posters.
Just putting these extra staples in for good measure. All right, now to get back to my land, I gotta go through this stream. Yeah, there's a lot of crisscrossing of streams. Some deer tracks right here. I think maybe a coyote paw print right there. It's kind of cool.
I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe the one upside about having to do this posting process is I really do enjoy walking the land. The downside is, like, as I'm walking the property, usually I can't just like throw up signs willy-nilly because then my signs are out of like date sequence, and so somebody could argue that I hadn't properly posted my land, and so I have to like do a formal walk and make sure I hit each sign, and they can be no further apart than 400 feet, and so that's what I gotta do that.
I'm not even sure I'm gonna get across here. I usually do this work in August because it's easier to cross the streams. Not the case today. Maybe I can get across over here. Don't slip.
Keep waiting for the year where I submerge myself on one of these.
I didn't know any better. I'd say that that's actually a moose track right there. Actually, no, that's not a moose track.
It's a really, really big buck.
All right, my property line curves that way, kinda.
The GPS moves on you a little bit.
I think that's the corner right over there.
Yeah, I don't even know how people used to do this back in the day prior to GPS. I guess they didn't bother to do this is the real answer to that. And again, the funny thing is, I already registered my land with the town clerk and paid the fee to have it posted. So the fact that I have to do this is like redundant and an insult to injury, particularly because most hunters are usually carrying some form of GPS in this day and age.
There should be a sign right about there.
I don't see one, but I'm gonna add another. Here we come to another old-fashioned boundary marker.
some ancient barbed wire. So yeah, I mean, that's basically the property line right along this barbed wire fence that's right here.
I've ripped out a lot of barbed wire over the last couple of years. Just have to make a note to come back here in the next few weeks and rip out that strip as well. I'd hate to have an animal get caught on that and get injured somehow, so gotta be careful with stuff like that. The remnants of farm past, you know?
I think the next one's over there.
Some more deer tracks right through this mud over here. We've had a ton of deer around this year. Like, I have personally encountered, I don't know, maybe a dozen deer, like face to face within like, 10, 15 feet. I don't know, easily a dozen times this year. There's several bucks that are wandering around. There's a doe with a fawn that I've seen consistently over by some of the good apple trees. I mean, just as you watch some of the trail camera footage, it's a whole heck of a lot of deer. Wow, would you look at that? That's pretty gosh darn majestic. You know, watching my trail cameras, I've also seen the occasional coyote, but not as much as we used to have. I think really having both Toby dog and Abby dog has kept them further from the farm than they've ever been, at least in my time around here. I haven't seen anything like a bobcat or a fox or a fisher or anything like that in quite a long time. But I have seen more bear this year on the farm than years past, that's for darn sure. You know, I had that encounter with the large black bear one summer morning on the farm, and the black bears pop up a lot on the trail cameras, which is kind of cool. You know, I mentioned earlier that I'm opposed to hunting kind of the larger carnivore predator, omnivore in the case of a coyote or a bear, but definitely act as a predator occasionally. I mean, they are the creatures that are more or less at the top of the food chain around here. And the reason I'm opposed to it is I don't think it's necessary. And I also think that they play an important role in our ecosystem. You see, back in the day, before all the white people showed up, this land was teeming with wolves. Wolves were more or less the apex predator. I mean, you had bear, you didn't have coyote, but wolves actually played a really important role in the ecosystem in these parts, in that they were helping keep a lot of the other animals' numbers in check by eating them. But as the white settlers came in and really went to work in eradicating the wolf populations, and really by the time the 20th century rolled around, there were no wolves, there were no catamounts. All those major kind of predators in this area were gone. It really did create kind of a risk for the ecosystem because you didn't have any other creatures to control the numbers. That's actually why the coyotes even moved into this direction. They were essentially opportunistically migrating from the west, and they just essentially saw an ecosystem with a niche that they could fill. And folks always scratch their head when they hear me, a duck and goose and chicken farmer, singing the praises of the coyotes, but I see the coyotes as helping manage the wildlife populations in this area, particularly the rodents. I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but the majority of a coyote's diet is rodent. And so I use my livestock guardian dogs as non-lethal predator control to keep those coyote numbers in check and keep them away from my birds. But there's actually been studies that even Vermont's Fish and Wildlife Department's put out there that would suggest that hunting coyotes is actually counterproductive and unnecessary. And there are actually some that will theorize theorized that it causes a spike in the population of coyotes in the area. Similarly, bears really do regulate their numbers based on the available food supply. In the lean years, they're having fewer cubs and their numbers are not nearly as plentiful, versus in some of the more flush years, like I think the one that we're having right now, they're all over the place.
Did you actually know that a bear's primary food source in the summer months are berries? In fact, their diet often looks more like a wild turkey than anything else. You know, lots of berries in the summer months, lots of apples and nuts in the fall months. I don't think the bears are going to mind sharing a little bit of their late season blackberries with me here.
That's amazing. It tastes like a final gasp of summer.
I actually think bears are really important to the ecosystem because they're like the big disruptors. Like they'll come in through here trying to get berries like that, and they'll break up dead wood and brambles.
And really sort of change the topography of the plant life you have here. The theory I have in my head, at least the mental model, is like, much like my cattle will come in and trample all the weeds that I don't want growing in my pasture while they're eating the grass that they do, I feel like the bear kind of acts in a similar fashion here in the forests. And so if you don't want a forest that's just covered in all the same species of plant or tree or whatever, having bears on the land are a great way to promote that biodiversity.
Of course, walking through these prickers is no fun. Just another gripe about all these signs. So gosh darn ugly. I mean, look at this. This is just a beautiful patch of wilderness, and the fact that I have to mar it with this big yellow ugly sign.
That to me feels like the crime.
So if you actually look right over here, so that's my neighbor's property, you can see the remnants of an old sugar shack right over here. So this is where they used to come out, boil up some maple sap, turn it into syrup, somewhere right around here.
That's actually another one of the cool things about wandering through here, because probably about 130, 140 years ago, this was probably all open land right now. Probably even less time, maybe even 100 years ago. And it's since crept back to being forest, but it's fun to stumble on the old remnants of what used to be back in this space. I don't think this part of the land was actually owned by the Shaw family. I think it was actually the next folks over. Yep, see? Here you can see more of those remnants. We got old maple syrup buckets right here, some roof. All the old metal ended up in this corner. And then there's another sign,
which would indicate the corner between the two properties.
This is another corner spot right over here. See another remnants of an ancient old stone wall up in here.
This one's in really good condition. Pretty cool, huh?
I actually made a whole video talking about the origins of these stone walls earlier this spring. I will leave a link to it somewhere right around here on the video. Not down in the description, but up here in the video somewhere. And if I forget, just remind me in the comments. I know, guys, I'm notorious for getting to add links.
Looks like a gosh darn postcard over here. If you guys have seen previous versions of this video where I clomp around and look at the woods around my farm, you'll recognize this truck that has been here, I don't know, probably since before my father was born. Folks have guessed what it is in the comments. I can't even see an insignia on here. Just sitting and rusting and becoming part of nature.
I'm having to go up higher on the stream here,
because usually the spots that are accessible to walk across, they're like completely underwater right now.
Like I said, it's a wetter than average summer this year.
I think this looks like my best bet. There we go. So this is where I have to kind of weave back and forth between my land and my neighbor. This stone wall is pretty much the marker between the properties. Back up the hill. Sort of took me off course, having to go downstream to avoid getting soaked. I actually need to get back to this corner over here.
Because again, according to Vermont state law, if I don't mark the corners, I'm not legally posted, which is infuriating.
All right, I guess if I drop a new sign right here, it'll have me covered.
I will admit, I'm often anxious about stepping over the wrong line and accidentally posting on a neighbor's land and like creating bad feelings. When you're out here like in a space like this, I feel like that's a very easy and honest mistake to make. Most of my neighbors know me pretty well and know that it probably was just me screwing up the read on the GPS. That said, it's still a concern. I feel like the posting laws in Vermont really do open up the potential for hunter-landowner conflict. Like, and just it seems a lot more likely that something bad could happen. I mean, I've had a number of run-ins over the years and have wondered if somebody's gonna get violent on me. It does make me a little bit afraid. I don't know. What can you do? It just is what it is, I guess. So technically the property borderline is right at the edge of that pasture. But I usually set my signs a little ways back because I don't want to be rude to my neighbors. Again, I don't want posting on my land to prevent out-of-towners from coming on my land be seen as like an act of being unneighborly. That was close. Hey, would you guys look at that over there? Is that something?
Get a closer look. Can't tell what that is. Look, look, look! Woo!
Is that a bear? Oh no, is that a bear? No, it's not a bear.
It's just a black bear looking stump.
I have a way of psyching myself out sometimes. Okay, that might not have been a bear, but that is most definitely a black bear paw print right there. Yes, I've been looking at these trail cameras on the regular, so I know we got a whole bunch of bear wandering through here, and so the idea of stumbling across one while I'm out here is not beyond the realm of possibilities. It also isn't something you should be like terrified of. I think black bears in particular are big old scaredy cats, and as long as you make enough noise, whether it's making weird sounds or talking to you guys, I'm not too worried about it. They're gonna hide well before I get too close. Looks like the sign that was right here got ripped down.
So somebody was here and tore it down. I don't see a sign of a sign anywhere on the ground. So I guess my land is over on that side. Well, technically it's just on this side, but I think I'm gonna just walk that side
because I'm worried that I'm not gonna be able to cross further down that way. All right, I'm gonna send you guys over first. And unfortunately, you're not gonna be able to see my epic jump across the riverbank because the camera tipped downward. Not too bad. My feet are a little bit wet, but I'm getting towards the end. Yeah, again, can you guys imagine like me at 80 years old trying to do this? If I don't wanna have folks poaching on my land, I don't know how I would prevent that, short of making sure I have enough money to hire somebody to do that. So I guess if you guys are interested, you should put in your pre-order for the Toby Dog book.
Rush delivery available. Call and order right now.
Maybe that way I can ensure that I have enough money to have people post my land when I'm 80. If you ever wonder why this area never gets turned into pasture,
because there are some steep drops here. Lordy, look, I gotta get down to that one right there.
So we're just crossing past the 3.5 hour mark. We're getting close to the end. So my cattle are pretty much right up over there, up on the other side of that ridge.
And this is the other far back side. You can see here's the old date.
Now let me put on the new date.
So back when we had the flooding, this entire area was just full with water running through it. It's definitely calmed down a lot since then.
I gotta say, I've been practicing my yoga and I feel like it shows. My balance is getting way better these days. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this latest tour of the wild parts of the farm. If you want to look back at other wilderness excursions, I'll leave a link to this playlist right here, or you can check out another video. Thanks for watching.